You ready?
Yeah.
And group 4 is going to talk about, group 5 is going to talk about
Katrina Palmer.
Katrina.
So Katrina Palmer's latest work is called End Matter, and it's comprised of 3 parts: an audio walk, a book, and an adapted part of the audio walk for Radio 4. And it's commissioned by Art Angel along with BBC Radio 4, and it's an audio piece, and it's set in Portland, in and around Portland, that's been like quarried Portland stone for like years and years.
Since the Roman times.
Yes.
Basically, Portland stone is Buckingham Palace is built of Portland stone, St Paul's Cathedral, like loads of like sculptures, and United Nations headquarters in New York. Like, it's basically everywhere, but Portland is only 6 miles, like less than 6 square miles. So it's like really small, and it's got like 5 quarries on it, and it's basically just had its stone taken away from it like for years and years and years, and it's losing itself.
So basically what she's done, instead of like using it for something else, she's kind of like considered the island as like a sculpture in itself, and also like the audio, because one quote from Miranda Sawyer from The Guardian says that Palmer is a sculptor, he builds sculptures using words, so the whole kind of audio is kind of sculptural in itself in the way that she describes things, and she's kind of thought of the island and the way that it's being like dug out as a way of like sculpturing this massive sculpture as such.
In Dorset Echo, like a local newspaper to so Portland's in Dorset basically. Katrina Palmer is quoted to have said, "It's unique because it's made for here and not for anywhere else," which is, so it makes it like really strange how like we've listened to it on the internet in London, but I think it does work in London because again we've got Buckingham Palace and St Paul's Cathedral, so the Portland stone, we're practically surrounded by it, which is, it works, it's successful in that way.
Yeah, the commission was like, the brief for the commission was a site-specific, groundbreaking proposal to change the UK's cultural landscape, and whether it is site-specific or not, it's kind of, because you can listen to it online as well, you don't actually have to be in Portland, so it's kind of, does it work as a site-specific piece or not? And it also changes the site when you listen to it. So I was listening to it in my room, kind of gives a different dimension to the work.
I think it's actually on the Tumblr, isn't it, at the bottom? Are you looking for the...
Yeah, I just...
Oh, maybe it's not the right one, actually.
Yeah, we'll play you a piece from the audio.
Yeah, it's really difficult.
Should we talk about our drawings?
Oh, yeah, it's frozen a bit. Let me just find it.
Oh no, we're not.
No, you should be able to. Okay. So the audio walk is also 3 parts as well.
Welcome to the Loss Adjuster's offices. Take a moment to settle into our space, behind the doors of number 52 Eastern Street, beyond the vanishing present. We hide in plain sight. Feel free to investigate our offices. Just be sure to be watchful. Our inquiries deal with serious matters and substantial uncertainties. The surfaces you touch, the smells and sensations are real, and to that extent continuous with the everyday space outside. However, in this same space, a number of fictional events have taken place. You are advised to remain conscious of the working of your own mind as it is in there, which may be in here, that such happenings are summoned to emerge. The core of our work is the attempt to quantify the manifold losses associated with Portland and the mortality the stone is formed of. In this way, in our estimation, it's physically comprised of the demise of prehistorical eras. Metaphorically, it embraces the death of the individuals and things it shaped to memorialize. Practically, it sustains the displacement of large portions of itself. Additionally, the inhabitants of this office investigate other locations worldwide, and in general, a loss is satisfactorily adjusted for when counterbalanced by a presence. However, forgive us for jiggering and tweaking our findings to manage the magnitude of Portland's absences.
As well as kind of telling us a lot about the island within the piece, there's also like a fictional story that goes along with it. So although we get like a different experience when we're not doing the walk, we can still kind of like appreciate the like story of it. And then another response we've done to kind of like not being able to actually see it is like we've done these drawings of what we'd kind of like imagine it to.
Yeah, because we felt like, because Katrina Palmer often uses like text and words and audios as part of her, like a main part of her practice, we thought that she was, well, I feel that she's trying to make us visualise what she's trying to describe. It's very descriptive, and like, so yeah, we all decided to take some drawings from it, to like describe what we think we see, visualise.
The drawings are based on the story.
On the story, yeah.
Or like how we like visualise the settings, or like kind of like just
Because the story takes you from 52 Eastern Street, which is the Loss Adjuster's offices, and there's an artist in residence living above their office, and the story then follows on from her kind of eyes and her perspective, and then to a graveyard, and then to the quarry itself.
And then it talks of the like quarry master and his two daughters, which is like the main fictional part of the story, and it talks of like two like pivotal moments in their lives, and it's just really oddly put. It's really cold and blunt and
It's quite dark, kind of tale.
yeah, emotionless, and yeah, the two sisters are just, they're seen as really strange on the island as well. They're like kind of outcasts of the island.
yeah. I think everything just seems like a little bit kind of strange and kind of hard to imagine, and I think like drawing them as well as kind of like visualising to you guys what we're thinking kind of like helped us kind of understand it and get a better picture of what was going on as well, because it's quite hard to like take it all in, especially when there's like, obviously it's an audio thing, so it's like you have to kind of listen to it a lot of times to kind of like take in each bit. So
yeah, because the no visuals like kind of makes it harder to understand because you've like there's only one way to like be able to follow it, so you've got to really listen closely.
The language that Katrina Palm uses is very like sculptural, and everything that happens on the island is kind of a compensation for the loss of stone on the island. And when we meet the artist in residence, the loss adjuster wants to meet her because they're drawn for a physical confirmation of her. And when I heard that, I kind of wanted a physical confirmation of the island itself as well. So I think it kind of relates to our relationship with the site as well as the characters within it.
Yeah, and the major theme that follows through the whole story, tale, audio thing, is loss. Loss of taking it like basically it's like this like the stone being taken from the island, and then the story brings in the loss adjusters. So loss adjusters who are people who I don't know, loss adjusters
like compensate for loss by basically like adding something else or like filling a gap with some like of absence with something else.
Yeah.
So another person on the island who kind of ironically has the same kind of job as the loss adjusters is the grave digger, which basically all the gravestones are made out of the Portland stone. So they basically like cut away at the island and then they just put it back in a different place as a gravestone. And also his job is obviously to like dig into the stone to make room for burying the dead people. And obviously like death is like a massive loss in itself. So he's kind of like making a gap in the island, which is a loss of the stone, and filling it with another loss. So it's all this kind of like recycling of like one loss leads to another as such. And yeah, there's a quote which says, which is dictated by one of the loss adjusters in the audio piece, which says, "Without exception, it is death that precedes the employment of this fearless youth," which is referring to...
Can you just repeat that line?
It says, "Without exception, it is death that precedes the employment of this fearless youth," which is basically referring to the grave digger and how loss is what is employing him, which is obviously the same as him, so it kind of all relates.
There's quite an important scene at the end of it. Should we play the third of it?
Yeah.
Completely aware and conscious of your physicality, because the stone's being removed from under our feet. It's disappearing. It is being cut out.
It's Hazeline Horrocks. She lives in one of the beach huts at Church Hope. I know something else about her. I know she met the loss adjusters one day out in the quarry. It was a peculiar encounter. She had her hand against a stone when they approached her.
I know you're hiding something, Casey.
Yeah, I do have something to confess. After we walked together last time, we said goodbye and I carried on deeper into the quarry. I was lost for a while, and when I stepped out into the open air, I had a really peculiar encounter with two men and a woman who work in Easton. They call themselves loss adjusters.
They said they were interested in sensually engaged absences, and that they were trying to uncover any evidence of explicit bodily encounters on the island. Their suggestion was that such experiences are some kind of compensation for the displacement of the island's physicality.
They said that they'd got the measure of the gravedigger, but they wanted to understand who I was and what I was doing there, things like that. But it was peculiar, like an interrogation.
It sounds like they were conducting research, and on you of all people, Hazy.
First, Adjuster kept questioning her, and then something strange happened.
He asked if I'd ever felt the earth moving, then he just came right out with it.
You've utterly abandoned yourself. You're empty and limitless, completely aware and conscious of your physicality, because the stone's being removed from under our feet. It's disappearing. It is being cut out and displaced, and has been for centuries. It's destabilizing, isn't it? Is that how you understand it?
I got this overwhelming feeling of being examined, but at the same time wanting to be pressed between him and the stone.
I bet she wanted to be pressed between him and the stone.
I kneeled in the dirt.
She kneeled in the dirt.
That's when the woman cut in. She said that I'd abandoned myself and that I was empty and limitless. She said that because the stone was being taken away from under my feet, I was becoming more aware of my physicality. I stood up with my sore, scraped knees, then hitched up my skirt and leaned back. There was a cold stone against my naked backside. Then they started to work in formation. The second male adjuster stepped up to my right side, stopped and dropped his trousers. He put one of his legs out to cross mine, but he stayed fixed in that awkward open stride. Then he reached across my body and pressed his palm into my breast. His dip was pointing straight at me, so I clutched it. Of course I did, although I still kept one hand on the rock behind. The woman, who now stood to my left, took hold of my left thigh with both hands. She lifted it up, and I know I'm no waif, but it was like she had to support a tremendous weight, because she positioned herself with one leg stretched out behind her, and the other, closest to me, was bent at the knee to help her arms take the strain. As for my thigh, she managed to haul it towards my chest, leaving my lower limb hanging and my body exposed. The three of us were lined up like that when I noticed the other man. He was just standing there, staring at my hole. I told him to fuck me. And when he did, he was so hard and his movement so rhythmic, it was like he was riveting us all into place and we were fixed in that arrangement like a relief. It was weird. I couldn't move for ages. It was weird. I couldn't move for ages.
So the way that whole sort of scene is described is like quite sculptural in itself, the way that's like quite detailed in the way that she describes where like all of their limbs are and how they're placed, and you kind of imagine this whole kind of structural image. And the way that her leg is being described as a tremendous weight kind of suggests that it's almost like the stone itself, as if she's having to lift stone, which will obviously be really heavy, because the theme throughout is also that like the people and the stone are kind of like as one, and the way that she's described as being like pressed up against the stone is kind of like they're kind of joining together.
Which relates to the quarry in itself as a whole. That like the way it's described, it seems like a mechanical operation, and it's like relates to like cranes and trucks and things, and it's kind of the whole thing to me just seems like a big metaphor for like a quarry and just Portland as itself.
Yeah, I think that scene is, like you say, like quite a metaphor for the whole thing, and like the way they're like working in formation, which is the way it was it kind of, up until then, you kind of think of the loss adjusters as the way they're described at the beginning to being like these stuffy offices with all these printers, to have this kind of like mundane job. But then like as it goes on, you kind of realise that the loss that they're kind of accounting for is like a bit different. And so it could be that she's empty and limitless, and so they're kind of like filling this gap by what they're doing.
I think the language they use there as well is also much more explicit than like the abstract language, sculptural language they've been using before. And I put this picture up because I can imagine like the scene being carved into stone, like the way they're all kind of in this relief kind of thing. And this like British Museum temple, I can imagine it being kind of put up there, and it's made out of Portland stones.
It's described as where before they have sex or whatever, it's described that Hazeline has essentially engaged absence, which suggests that like virginity, which again relates to loss because they're taking the loss, taking her virginity, and they talk of filling her whole, and like because it's an audio, you don't know. There's an ambiguity because of whole, and whole as in with a W, whole. So it's like making her whole again, or yeah.
And also we don't know whether that whole scene is actually her losing her virginity, which would obviously be then yet again another loss. So I mean, it's just it seems like the whole thing is just like one loss leading to another filled by another, and all this kind of, and also a really important theme is like the way that the island is described in a really similar way to like the people. So it's kind of as if like Katrina Palmer's like empathising with the island as itself. Like for example, when the grave digger is described to be digging a grave, it says, a pickaxe repeatedly elevated in his hands is brought down to pierce, stab and jostle through the rubble. Like pierce, stab and jostle are like really harsh sounding words, and it kind of makes me think as if like the island's actually being harmed, and so they all it's kind of like personified.
I was really interested in the way she writes as well as like her narrative is like a sculpture in itself, and I'm reading at the moment her book called The Dark Object, and it also has strong links with this, like the way she writes, and there's a character in it that like records her audio, like some of the characters in this, and it's quite similar, and it's a really good book.
Another main loss that we haven't spoken about is Celestine's death. So Hazeline's sister, she dies from a sudden released or like escaped horse that gallops over the island, and Hazeline like feels a shake in the island and runs across, somehow knowing that her sister's going to get crushed by loose stone from living on the side under a cliff, and she does get crushed by stone, by Portland stone. And I think that's like obviously a horrible way to die, but it's kind of nice idea that she's getting crushed into the stone, and Portland stone is known for having fossils, and so it's kind of like a nice idea that in like thousands and thousands, I don't know how long it takes, but in years' time, Celestine will become a fossil. She's part of the stone now, and may well be quarried again.
I think as well you could see that as a kind of revenge, so the island's kind of like getting back at like people in general for like digging, so and then it like comes back and crushes her.
Like it's got a life of itself, because like the horse seems so random, like
it's almost like the horse is just like helping the stone. Like on the same side.
Like a heavenly figure, like or something. But it's also can relate to the sex, and when like it's like her losing her virginity is quite an emotional. It seems like there's just this live, suddenly something's become really lively on the island, or the isle.
It's quite a monumental ending as well.
Yeah, it's really
Water
like
and stone, like, there's no making these huge monuments. Like, it's quite monumental.
I think the whole thing as well just builds up to be even more kind of like shocking as such. Like the beginning's kind of a bit weird, the way that he's sort of describing things, and then you get like this sex scene, and then the whole scene at the end where the whole, you know, like the death is just quite like a unusual way for someone to die, and it kind of all just builds up to be quite like not what you would have expected from the beginning. So in that way, I think as a piece of art, it's quite successful in having a kind of factor which, you know, is different from what you've heard before, or like anything.
I don't know how successful it is though as a site-specific piece. And the fact that it is kind of like you can always listen to it, 'cause you can download it and listen to it online. It's kind of like I was thinking of comparing it to Roger Haynes' work. The fact that it wasn't destroyed, and I don't know whether it's kind of like an attempt by Art Angel to kind of protect their commissions. So there's kind of like a lasting kind of artwork.
Yeah, the radio version runs out in like 5 hours' time because it's been
Today?
It's been online. Yeah, it's been online for a month. So there's a lasting amount of time for that version because they are like slightly different.
You can buy it as an MP3 or something? Or?
Yeah.
I want the sound, the walk, but not the.
But
Not
yeah,
the
and yeah, also the Radio 4 adaptation is kind of adjusted and kind of like a diluted version of the whole audio walk in itself. And it's kind of become more of a documentary of Portland Stone than actually like a story. And it's quite obviously beneficial for Radio 4 to have an audio piece.
I thought they sort of combined it. They made a sort of long introduction about the project, and then it goes into the story, doesn't it?
Yeah, but it's not the same.
It's not complete. Oh, I see.
Like, it's mainly the third part of the audio.
Oh, I didn't realise that.
That's all I looked at.
First, so yeah. So.
Can we go to questions now?
Yeah, sure.
We've got 15 minutes of questions. Anybody want to start?
It's about loss, and you guys saying how stuff is lost through it, you not being able to experience it on the site, and you can experience it everywhere. And I think that kind of echoes the story in itself anyway, that this stone is taken and used everywhere else, and this story is taken and put into new context. So it just kind of like adds to that layer of loss.
Definitely, and like being in London and like being surrounded by, like not surrounded, but having Portland Stone in London, it's almost like you feel guilty that it's there, but it like fits in completely with the whole like meaning of this like story. Yeah, it works really well. I think it's successful in that way.
Yeah.
Rather than like, because not many people are going to go and visit Portland just to experience that audio walk.
And also there's
But it's a piece of public art as well, and it's kind of like, do the public know about it if it's in this like, how like is public art meant to affect like the surrounding?
But Portland is a tourist
But it's
attraction.
like, who's gonna? Well, yeah, maybe
There's
having
like
it
coachloads of people.
maybe having it online kind of lets people not go to kind of
Yeah, I guess.
Portland. They can just listen to it. They don't have to.
It's not that far from London, really, is it? Notice I know a lot of sculpture students used to sort of go there as a kind of pilgrimage, you know, to be at the source of the stone and things like that. It's quite doable, I think, to go there. I was just going to say, when you said that Art Angel, their brief for this competition was groundbreaking, site-specific groundbreaking piece of work that changes the cultural landscape. It sounded a bit like she sort of wrote a proposal that played on all those words. No? They were site-specific, groundbreaking, and cultural landscape.
Yeah, the landscape of Portland is that like changing.
And I heard them say that, what's his name, James, I can't remember his name now, the head of Art Angel, said that they had 1,500 entries, and they'd never heard of her at all, and chose it. It was really unusual where it was kind of unequivocal. There was just one application out of 1,500 that they thought was just stood out and answered all the things that they wanted it to do. But, I thought that was quite a nice story. And I was going to say, I mean, it's reflected in the way you presented the work, because it seemed to me, I could be wrong, but it seemed to me that you quite liked it.
Yeah, I didn't at first, but it was actually after doing the drawing, actually kind of understanding what was actually happening and making it into something I could understand. The more I listened to it, because I had to listen to it 5 times to finish my drawing, it made it, yeah, I love it now.
And what didn't you like about it at first? Because there was no visual and it was sort of a bit inaccessible or something.
Yeah, and it's like an hour long, so it's hard to sit down and listen to it and not do anything and listen to it really concentrating lots.
I liked it, well, I didn't really like it at the beginning, but since reading that book, I really like it because I really like her style of writing.
Yeah, I've got lots of questions. Anyone else got?
So the website, you did it yourself with the recommendation of what you saw and everything?
The Tumblr, yeah.
Yeah, it's just got pictures of all of our drawings and some quotes and some pictures like the carved building, just things that kind of relate and just everything that we wanted to show put together with just in one thing.
And how did you encounter the work? Did you want to choose something together or?
Oh, it's not anywhere, it's just online. Is that what?
Yeah, that's what, did you want in a room and you were let's press play?
No, we all listened to it on our own, didn't we?
We listened to it individually and then came together.
But we all picked out similar points that we knew we'd want to concentrate on.
So it was more like a notebook book or something like that?
Pardon, sorry?
Like a notebook book. You know, you can listen to books when you're...
Oh, like an audio, yeah, oh, exactly, yeah.
Alright.
So you weren't tempted to visit Portland?
Portland. I didn't know it was so close.
Well, it's not that close, but it's not impossible.
No.
What do you think about the radio? It's although it's specific, I don't think it's necessary to go there. I think it exists as a piece on its own that you listen to, and I don't think obviously it corresponds with the space, but I don't think it's necessary to know or experience the space to get something from the work. I just wondered.
Yeah, I definitely agree. If someone had said if it wasn't presented as an audio walk, I would never think it was an audio walk. And then when you think of an audio walk, you wouldn't think of something like this. To me, it seems like something quite different. So I think, although you obviously would you'd get a different experience if you did go there, but I think the experience that you get if you're not there is still valid and still definitely something.
I kind of it might sound stupid, but I kind of want it to be necessary to go to Portland. I feel like I should need to go to Portland to
But was it being available on the internet?
Yeah, I don't like that it's that available to me.
Then I think just not necessarily specifically with this, but it's quite an interesting space, this nothing space.
Radio.
Yeah, just that you can experience something and it be totally ephemeral and it could be anywhere, and that doesn't, obviously that alters it completely, but
it really changes the audience as well, because there's a certain person who listens to Radio 4 and there's certain people who listen to radio, but no, not like a certain person. There's I don't listen to Radio 4, and I wouldn't listen to it but there's not much advertising for it, so I didn't hear about this, and it was on a month ago.
I Facebook enthusiastically about Radio 4 program.
Maybe I should listen to Radio 4 more, but it is a tight audience.
But
it's a different audience, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's a great, as I was saying earlier, I think it's a sort of golden age of radio, strangely enough, although we think it's the golden age of the internet, it's really the golden age of radio. There's really amazing essays and plays and things being written for radio at the moment. I think it's something to do with visual culture being so overwhelming, and you feel really refreshed when you don't have it, when you're listening instead. And I think certain artists, certain creative people are sort of tuning into that somehow. Pardon the pun. and are making wonderful art at the moment for sound art and for radio. And it is amazing the way it stimulates your imagination and allows you to make your own pictures.
Yeah.
And when I heard parts of this, I was just thinking, I was struck by the way that I historicised it. I sort of put it in a sort of a late Victorian or Edwardian or something scenario, but it isn't necessarily. Did you think it's set in any time? Maybe because of the relationship between the men and the women or something made it seem
also
dated.
what was the kind of, you know, like the background noises are kind of like clunking and those men kind of showing.
Yeah,
that sounds like it's really.
Or a runaway horse. They all sound like quite sort of.
But there's like photocopies and like,
yeah,
and then right at the end, like because I agree with you. It does feel like it's really set back, but then it talks about a helicopter coming to save
that's really interesting.
And that helicopter really did, like, I did think about that. It's like, it felt really weird, but I hadn't really.
And you know, the times involved are amazing. It's funny, we were talking about Roger Shawns earlier and talking about geology, and I was saying it reminded me of Robert Smith and the way he sets things in geological time, and then we move on to Katrina Palmer, and she's also playing with, you know, the British Museum represents time through the Portland stone, and people's lives and deaths and everything get sort of measured in this enormous sense of time, geological time. I think it's almost something to do with like what I called earlier on this post-human or non-anthropocentric approach to making art or thinking about the world, trying to sort of put the human in its place in a way, without the human being sort of on top of everything. You know, in light of Portland stone, the human's quite a small creature in a way. So I just find it a richer and richer, amazing piece of work, and I was interested in the plays of history and imagination. But the other thing I wanted to mention before we ran out of time was economy. There's this thing about loss. I mean, I assume that if I went to Portland, I might be able to find this little shop, this agency, and maybe the apartment above is where she was staying, and so she sort of fictionalised all these facts. And maybe there is a place where you do your artist residency there. But it just interested me that we've just gone through, we're sort of going through this time where everybody talks about the economy. You know, these people are suffering because of the economy, and these people are living a life of luxury, and everybody's got economy on their mind in a way. But it's a certain kind of economy, and when you hear this story, it's almost like she's reminding us that there's a sort of a grander economy at work. You know, there's all these other kinds of losses and compensations. Do you see what I mean? Which makes the purely consumerist or capitalist economy like a small economy within this much bigger economy.
Yeah, it's kind of like the one loss that she doesn't mention is anything to do with money at all, and it's kind of it kind of makes you think like how many other things there are like to be lost.
Yeah, I think you said that. You said something about the way that you think the loss adjusters are there just for sort of banal things, but really everything really profound gets caught up in the idea of loss.
Yeah, like it all just links, and then they'll be filling one loss with another loss, and so on. Great, it's just kind of like this big loss cycle. So.
Yeah, it sounds like a really great piece of work to me. Anybody got any other questions? We've got 3 minutes. 3 minutes of Unit 2.
She's quite explicit and it's quite abrupt.
Yeah, apparently in all her stories this happens.
Yeah, from what I've heard.
What's your question?
I was just saying, like, what did you guys make of it?
Sudden interruption of sex.
It was shocking at first, but actually
it's like shocking because the way she writes is quite shocking anyway.
But that's,
everything's just a bit
She's
like
very
shit
like
happened.
abrupt and she's quite like cold about it. So that's quite shocking.
Yeah.
It's not like a
It's not
sensual
50 Shades of Grey.
experience. It's like I found this falling with rubbing bum on a slab of stone and like just kind
Yeah.
of
We thought like the way she was like quite cold about it, kind of reminisces of Stone in a way, like, and it was, for me it was surprising because I've not read anything or listened to her or anything before, so I didn't know anything about her style. So when it got to that bit, yeah, I was a bit like not expecting it. But then yeah, like the way she describes it is just like quite reminiscent of stone and sort of once you get over the like the shock value and the way she uses like words like fuck and dick and stuff, you kind of actually just realise that it's quite like it's not actually that sexual. It's kind of like quite sculptural. And
she's just saying that to be like descriptive and just that's what happened. It went like
matter
this.
of fact.
Yeah, but like actually it went like this, and it makes you think of the like the stone and the quarry. And, like,
do you think the whole thing is unemotional, or is there emotions elsewhere?
No,
I think even Hazel and Celestine have got some like unemotional attachment. Like,
they have, but then
when
they're also
isn't it? But then also what I found quite weird was the music in the background when they were sort of beginning to describe the sex scene. It's kind of like quite mellow. I don't
like melancholy.
But do you think
like,
like
just
the way that
eerie.
it seems to me all the voices reading are all rather unemotional, sort of flat and mechanical or something.
weird.
But, I mean, she might be. I mean, I think she's a wonderful
I just got
artist
my finger on weird. It's just
and a wonderful writer. And maybe she, by being there, she just absorbed this idea of stone and thought, I'm going to write in a sort of a cold, stony way.
It kind of writes like that in her other book as well.
It's sort of flat. Yeah.
It's quite funny.
The thing I find weird is that apparently she started off intending to live on a hut on the beach, but she couldn't do that because of like money reasons or something, so she actually moved in above the loss adjusters, and I don't know if she was going to use the loss adjusters before she wrote it, like before she actually created the piece, were they included? Because surely she had to write like a brief of what she was going to do.
Oh, I see.
I think she was just like, it was really cold and unlivable.
Yeah, and then
Yeah. Well, I think it's that specific because it's.
oh, completely. It's not about anything
Even though
else
you
but
can listen to it
Portland.
anywhere in the world on the internet, it's very much about this very particular place.
Because you know it's been written in Portland as well. You know it's been written by someone who's lived and breathed in like Portland. So
It's a really great story, isn't it? I like the idea that the United Nations is made from this little island in Dorset.
Yeah.
Okay, we better wrap up then. If anyone hasn't given me their essay, please do before you go. Thanks for the And so if we want to catch up with Katrina Palmer, and we can read some of